Hello everybody and welcome to the War Room. This one is for this weekend's heavyweight main event between Curtis Blaydes and Derrick Lewis. Same as all Derrick Lewis fights, it's all about if he lands the big power punches. There are a couple of things in his arsenal that might be problematic for Curtis Blaydes in this one, but it is really about Curtis Blaydes being the better fighter, the more technical fighter all round, and not getting caught with that wild power that Derrick Lewis has got. As far as experience, Derrick Lewis has got quite a lot. Curtis Blaydes 14-2, Derrick Lewis 24-7. Average fight time is slightly shorter for Derrick Lewis, but you look at the stats and there's nothing particularly surprising about it. I mean, height and reach is much of a muchness. The inch height and reach for Curtis Blaydes is going to largely be useless to him because this is going to be, predominantly a wrestling match anyway for him. I think that would at least be the smartest thing to do. As we look down the rest of the stats, strikes landed per minute, striking accuracy, strikes absorbed per minute, striking defense, everything is in favor of Curtis Blaydes. Same as if we hit the ground. I mean, average takedowns per 15 minutes is very high for him. You've got to think that Derrick Lewis knows coming into this one that Curtis Blaydes is a strong wrestler. He knows that at some point Curtis Blaydes is going to be trying to level change, probably pretty quickly. And he's going to have to either discourage him or at least have the conditioning to, give it a good shot every time he's back on his feet to land something significant. A few interesting things for you. Of Derrick Lewis's career, he's been stopped, 5 times? Once in the first round and once in the fourth round, but 3 times in the second round. And 7 or 50% of Curtis Blaydes' wins are in the second round. So that's going to be an interesting round to be watching out for. What I expect is Curtis Blaydes to come out, looking like he's got the intention of striking. And then as soon as Derrick Lewis is engaged in anything full power, he level changes underneath. What you'll see from Curtis Blaydes, as he level changes, he gets a good grip around the back of the legs, but then he tends to drive his upper body and trip with one of his legs, forcing him into the fence. That's when he gets him in that cycle, much like DC users, much like Khabib users, where as people are then scrambling back to their feet up against the fence, he's forcing them to carry his weight. He's fighting their grip, kind of just basically disrupting whatever they're trying to do and landing shots on the way up. He's very good at chaining things together, and obviously wrestling is his comfort zone. So I would expect him to be quite comfortable wrestling consistently with Derrick Lewis. And the reality is, Lewis is he's an athletic guy. He's got good balance. He's got good takedown offense. His flexibility not only lends to his high kicks that he does, but also to his flying knees, which is going to be key in this one for part of his takedown offense. But also his general balance, general takedown offense, and also his ability to get back to his feet. If you look at his fight against Gabriel Gonzaga or against Roy Nelson, 2 strong black belts, 2 big heavyweights, both were able to take him down. Neither could keep him down. He's just standing up. The one criticism is that he's standing up with bad technique. He's standing up with strength and with just kind of what comes natural to him, turning to his hands and knees, posting up and then getting back to his feet that way. He leaves himself vulnerable in lots of ways for Curtis Blaydes there. Now, Curtis Blaydes is not much of a submission guy, but he is very good at controlling people and beating them up. I believe he's a blue belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu under Cody Donovan, so I expect at some point in his career, 16 fights in, I expect at some point Curtis Blaydes is going to turn a corner and start submitting people on the ground. He's got all the other pieces to his game. Whenever we've seen him, like say the JDS fight, for example, there were a few times when he shot for a takedown or instigated a takedown, but really didn't insist on it. It looked a lot like JDS's takedown defense was very good, but in actuality, I think that was Curtis Blaydes just trying to remind JDS that he does have that option. I mean, he's a big, strong heavyweight. He's at the top end of the scales. And I believe that his ability to hustle and to wrestle and to force people to work is going to be really valuable against Derrick Lewis to make him fatigued, to slow him down, to win rounds from him, to keep taking the rounds away from him. Fatigue is going to be a big factor in this one, on one part or both parts. although obviously we've seen Curtis Blaydes work very hard, and he has got a good gas tank for a big guy, the wrestling is taxing on him. And after 15 minutes against Volkov, you could see that he was starting to slow down. Times in that fight where he looked a bit vulnerable was, in the fourth round and fifth round, where he was starting to get backed up. Volkov was starting to throw some combinations, some knees up the center. Bust his lip. And you've got to think, Derrick Lewis might not be quite as tall as Volkov, but those flying knees up the midsection. We've seen him against, who was it? We saw it against Latifi. We saw it against Alexei Olenek. That was the thing that started the finish of the Olenek fight. I very much expect that to be a part of Derrick Lewis's arsenal, because he's gonna, he's got the mindset of a fighter, and he's gonna, to an extent, accept that he's gonna be defending takedowns. You might as well try and discourage him by throwing a big knee up the center. We also saw him against Latifi, kind of posturing an uppercut, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see some of that in the early rounds. But the reality is, I think the first 10 seconds of the first round, we're going to see Curtis Blaydes shoot a takedown. He's going to hustle to a finish, and we're probably going to see him beat the first 2 rounds out of Derrick Lewis purely on out-wrestling him and beating him up if Derrick Lewis is trying to stand. The question is every time Derrick Lewis gets back to his feet, and that's the big question. Although Curtis Blaydes has only got 2 losses on his record, they're both to the same person. They're both to Francis Ngannou, another guy that's got big power, another guy that, if you look at both of them technically, I would say Curtis Blaydes is probably the more technical fighter, both striking and grappling. But, Francis Ngannou's got that X factor that Derrick Lewis has also got, that, the big power in his hands that can change the fight in any second. And talking of that, Derrick Lewis against Volkov was a fight that Derrick Lewis was losing consistently. He took 120-something strikes in that fight and landed 39 of his own, was able to uncork one big punch that was able to change the fight that he was losing up to that point. You compare the first 3 rounds of the Curtis Blaydes Volkov fight to the 3 rounds that we saw, or what was almost 3 rounds of Derrick Lewis against Volkov, and you can kind of see how this fight could go. It's going to be controlled by Curtis Blaydes. I think his striking's evolving, but it'll be more to set up his takedowns than anything else. What else? He's got 59 takedowns in the UFC, which is ridiculous. His takedown accuracy is not necessarily as high as he would perhaps like. What is it, 56%? But it's look at that takedown average per 15 minutes. Almost 7. He's pushing people to the length of and breadth of their conditioning. And we've seen Derrick Lewis slow down. We've also seen him hurt to the body. Something else that Curtis Blaydes could work really well. But the most dangerous version of Curtis Blaydes is in guard or in half guard top, and just controlling the insides of his opponent's biceps and dropping those elbows. He doesn't need many shots to do damage. He cuts most people on the forehead. Think of the Alistair Overeem fight. Opened him up with a couple of shots very quickly. That's the kind of impact he's going to have on Lewis. 1 second. It gets taxing talking for 10 minutes straight. I should start to breathe. Okay, what haven't I said? So for Curtis Blaydes, he needs to keep reminding Lewis that it's an MMA fight. He needs to force Lewis to work and force him to carry his weight, much like he did in the Abdurakhimov fight and in the Volkov fight. Body locks and trip takedowns are going to be useful for him. Sometimes he even gets the first takedown defended and then sticks with the body lock and works that trip, as I said. Going to be very useful against Lewis, upsetting his balance. Much easier to take him down if you're controlling his upper body and trying to trip his legs than trying to force him to stand on one leg, because that seems to be where his balance is best. If you start to topple the big man from the upper body, I think he goes down much easier, and that's what we've seen from his fights consistently. Patient with his striking, as he was in the JDS fight, somebody else that's a big puncher. Like I said, we've seen him hurt a few times in his fights. Even in the Mark Hunt fight, he was hurt in the first round, was able to take Mark Hunt down and just drown him with wrestling pressure and beat him up on the floor. Another good example of how this fight could potentially go. What else? What haven't I said? The flying knees I've mentioned, short bursts, high kicks, and bowling uppercuts from Derrick Lewis, as we would expect. I mean, he's very agile for a big man. He does throw a lot of high kicks. Maybe not the most educated of skill sets, but the intention that he throws and the power that he throws. And he's also, he's very good at reading where people are going to catch them with his hands. Particularly that uppercut is going to be a key for him in this one, because that centre channel, if he can fill that with knees and uppercuts, it's definitely going to discourage Curtis Blaydes from level changing. What else haven't I said? No, I think that's everything. Right. Enjoy the fights. See you next time.